often there's this traditional pickup in Chinese demand just after the Chinese holidays, and also you tend to get this effect when the Chinese budget is allocated every year. Then the provinces start to buy forward their copper. Do you think you're seeing that traditional pickup in demand from China right now?
I think we would expect to see that, and again driven by the same reasons that China has moved from being a relatively small consumer of copper to, I think today, around 38 to 40% of world copper consumption is coming out of China, and that's really driven by your sort of urbanization and industrialization of China, and that's continuing. Obviously, it's not spread equally across the year. During the Chinese holidays, you do see that falling off. You see various ups and downs throughout the year, but I think the basic trend is upwards. And I think we're going to continue seeing for the next, I would say 10 years at least, China continuing to increase its share of global copper consumption.
And still seeing those rates of copper demand growth that are sometimes close, in some years have been close to 10% a year, or what kind of demand do you see, for example, this year?
Yeah, we would certainly be expecting to see a very large part of incremental demand in world copper consumption coming out of China. So certainly those factors of industrialization and urbanization are going to continue to drive that story in China for quite some years. Mm-hmm. And we certainly would not see that slowing down in the next few years.
Mm-hmm. And what rates of copper growth would you see in China this year, for example?
I think that we would be expecting to see something fairly similar to last year. There's obviously the risk that the tightening policies in China are going to have a small impact on that, but we certainly would not see that as having a material impact on the overall copper demand.
And last year being about 7-8%, or
correct?
Yeah. Okay. And just when we look at the supply of copper from mines, especially in Chile, do you see further restrictions in supplies?
Well, I think most of the industry is impacted by the same factor of declining grades over time. So it certainly is a story of having to run forward quite quickly just to stay in the same place. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the major producers having to invest significant amounts of capital really just to maintain their current production. And I think Codelco is a good example of that. You see a huge capital program that they've got going forward. The numbers they're talking about are $15 to $16 billion. And really I think that will result in their estimated production going from 1.8 million tonnes, I think, up to 2 million tonnes of copper a year. So relatively small increase. It's really just investing to maintain existing production. And I think one sees that in a lot of the other producers as well. And so that, however, is being offset by a number of projects, new projects that are coming online. I think we're very fortunate in having taken the decision during the financial crisis to continue with the Los Bronces project. So we do find ourselves now as one of relatively few major expansion projects that's coming online within the next couple of years. So we'll obviously be seeing Los Bronces ramping up from its current sort of 220,000 tonnes a year or so up to, I think we'll be averaging over 490,000 tonnes for the next 3 years out of Los Bronces. And obviously that production, that throughput rate will be maintained. However, we'll see again grade declines starting to work that number down into sort of 5, 6, 7 years after the commissioning of that project. But we would see those declines being offset by further expansion projects and further development of other projects at Los Bronces.
Right, sure. And could you just briefly talk about the production disruptions that you've had at Collahuasi in the first 2 months of this year?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly we were impacted by the collapse of the ship loader in late 2010. mitigating actions put in place to find alternative ports to ship our concentrate out of have been fairly successful, with the result that it's in fact not had any direct impact on our production rates on the operations. It has meant we've had to move that concentrate through 3 other alternative ports, and that will have an implication on the profile of our sales throughout the year, but not the total amount of sales. In terms of actual production itself, we have been impacted by a particularly wet altiplanic winter in the first 2 months of this year. I think rainfall figures are around 450% higher than they were for the same period last year, and so that has had an impact on our production. So we would expect the first quarter of Collahuasi to be lower than what we produced last year, but the management is working very hard to put in place a mitigation plan to recover most or all of that production during the remaining 9 months of this year.
And can you say in any way how much lower that might be on a quarterly basis? Just even a rough guidance.
Well, at this stage, obviously, March figures still have to come through, and we'll be announcing fairly shortly what the first quarter's production
and with the possibility to recover that production in the year, or at least try and achieve your yearly target.
Yeah, we're certainly going to be looking at what can be done to recover that lost production during the remaining 9 months of this year.
Okay, that's great.